So we have to be very vigilant. This atmosphere is dangerous to people of African descent. As Vincent earlier pointed out, it is counter the goal of the decade with respect to recognition, and is in fact, in many ways, returning us to a position that we have struggled to get past. The struggle is greater now than it has ever been. And I think our people need to be vigilant and they need to be active and not wait for someone else. And while IPADG is going to try its utmost to do its work, we certainly can benefit from volunteers who can assist us because we are small in number and the task is huge.
The task is huge. Vincent, a couple of minutes ago, I put a comment by one of our viewers on the screen about fascism. Your reference to the Italian criminologist, and I want to draw you in on this question of the rise of the fascist state in Guyana, and I want you to tie our discussion here on this cartoon in with it, but also what took place at the PPP's Congress with the removal from the constitution of quote unquote Marxism, Leninism, and socialism, but leaving in place democratic centralism. I remember a couple of years ago when Coffee 250 made the intervention that we are in an emerging apartheid state. All hell broke loose. The government went berserk. Some of our own people felt that we had stepped a little bit too far. Today, it's normal for our people to refer to this state as an apartheid state. Are we stepping out too much in terms of our characterization of an emerging fascist state in Guyana?
First of all, let me be clear that what you have asked about is not an extant fascist state, but an emergent fascist state, which means that there are processes that are unfolding.
Yes.
That can take us ultimately to be a fascist state. So let me first of all be clear about that. I think it's more than coincidental that you're having this kind of cartoon coming out when some other things are happening, because all of these things are related to thought processes and to ideas that are dominant. When one speaks about fascism in simple language, it speaks to a political idea where the government seeks to control everything. A political idea where the government seeks to control everything and not allow people to say or to do what they would wish to say or do unless it is in conformity with what the government wishes to have said or to have done. Simple layman idea. Now, if the government does not push back against this cartoon, in the context of the fascism I speak about, one could argue that this is what they would like to have said or like to have done. And so we come to the question, can it be argued that that is so? Can it be argued that there is elements of fascism emerging in our society? Go back to the question. Fascism really speaks about total control. What we have witnessed in our society is the government seeking to exercise total control. And that starts at the highest level in our society, the parliament. Whilst it is a talk shop, the reality is in the parliament that only what the government says prevails. Only what the government says prevails. Under a chairmanship, Speaker of the National Assembly, who is on record as saying the government, the opposition gets its say and the government gets its way. So there's an acceptance, a virtual, ideational, ideological acceptance that the government has a right to total control because the opposition may have its say, but the government gets its way. And not only has he said that, not only does he preside over a parliament, but he presides over a parliament which does exactly that. The government gets its say, its way, and the opposition is only entitled to say. And so we see the control element there. But fascism's control is beyond just what happens in a parliament where there is collective action. Fascism control is related to a very large extent also to an individual emerging as the maximum leader who virtually exercises ultimate control. And you know, interesting, the term ultimate control is associated with sovereignty. And it says that a sovereign state means the people exercising ultimate control. And here I am presenting the opposite, an individual exercising ultimate control. And that exercise of ultimate control becomes easily possible when you have an electoral system which allows for the representative list to determine who sits in parliament. And for that body of people who sit in parliament to be seen to be a parliament or parliamentarians of a party, which party embraces democratic centralism, which means that they are obligated to the decisions of the party, that it is indiscipline for them to go against, to speak against decisions of the party. And democratic centralism further goes on to specify that there is some singularity in terms of the decision-making process, because not only are the decisions made at the top, but the decisions are made largely influenced and made by one individual. And we see that manifestation not only in our parliamentary arrangements, but we see that manifestation every Thursday when one person speaks to this nation about everything governmental, everything. And not only does he speak about everything governmental as if he's speaking on behalf of, but he has made it clear that the government is a PPP government and that he is the general secretary of the PPP. So he's established that hierarchy, the party above the government, and he is the boss of the party. So we see where that singularity exists, both in terms of democratic centralism, which embraces the singularity and decision making at the top, and the way the party is organized and who sits at the top. And so you're seeing these elements of fascism facilitated by this democratic centralism. And therefore, when the party says to us they have abandoned Marxism and Leninism, and some people get up and say, well, things are getting better. Well, the People's Progressive Party abandoned Marxism, Leninism a long time in terms of its economic policies. It has embraced neoliberalism for the longest while. So whether they take it out of the constitution or not, there's nothing about them Marxists in terms of their economics. But they have not taken out democratic centralism. So they've retained that element which facilitates the emergence of fascism. That element has been retained. So where are we as Guyanese benefiting from what they have done at their Congress? Absolutely no benefit. All they have done is to pander to the West by saying, you had problems with us in the past. We were Marxist, Leninists. We are no longer Marxist, Leninists. We've gotten rid of that. But they have not gotten rid of democratic centralism, which facilitates an oligarchy and which facilitates that party to be determined in what happens even in the context of the neoliberal economy that we're supposed to have. Because they now can dictate the policies, that fashions, that facilitates the existence of private enterprise. And in that context, though it is called private enterprise, it is subject to the oligarchy and to the centralism because the politics is still about control. And more than just being about control, it's about control from a center and control from an individual, which is manifest in other ways. Our electoral system facilitates its construction. The way in which the parties can control the councillors in the democratic organs facilitates that kind of centralism as well. And the fact that we are told that the leaders of this country have no time to waste speaking to democratic organs, but they speak to the people directly, is establishing that one-manship, that maximum leadership, which is identifiable with fascism. And I dare say that when one looks at the history in terms of how we've had extrajudicial killings, the role the police force has been made to play in terms of acting outside of the rule of law and being extrajudicial, then that too brings other elements of fascism into play. And you know what, David? If we continue to perpetuate images of African Guyanese inferiority and other Guyanese superiority, then again, we are seeing the construct of the things which are fascist. Because fascism is also associated sometimes with nationalism, and nationalism can be seen in the context of, in a nation, one group prevailing as the superior group with its maximum leader. Let's not be fooled about elections. Hitler was elected. So let's not be fooled about elections. Fascists can be elected.
That's right.
We are in a very precarious situation where the signs on the horizon are very, very negative signs and points to the emergence of a fascist state in a situation where a lot of our structures can facilitate and in some regards give legitimacy to that fascism.
Vincent Alexander here, speaking on the signs of the emergence of a fascist state in Guyana. My God, the coming of oil, the coming of wealth to Guyana. They talked about all the curses and so forth. But it seems as though Guyana has invented its own peculiar curses that come with oil. Sister Sampson, as we wind down this program, you in the statement, a Padaji statement, it puts a burden on the media to begin to question more the activities of the government and the state. I want to ask you in closing to really address the African Guyanese people. Because it's a cartoon. And as we say, sometimes this too shall pass. But often these things have a long trail that they leave in their wake. And the consequences never go away. You can tell by the comments here by the viewers on this program that this is an issue that is not going away. Speak to African Guyanese people and in the wake of this cartoon and how they should, as we would say, move.
Thank you, David. I think that, and I was reading the comments as well, and I'm glad to see that people have been paying attention and are equally dismayed, disgusted, and insulted that the Stabroek News would choose to endorse, if in fact, this cartoon, because it's an endorsement that they utilize their very precious publishing space to put that forward and to send a message to African Guyanese that this is who we think you are. And I think we have to push back against this kind of thing as African Guyanese. I think there are several things we need to do. I think one, we have to not assume that everyone in our circle is aware that this has happened and understands its impact. So we have to do some teaching among the persons with whom we come in contact within our circles, making sure that we all see and understand. I'm sorry, just a second. I'm sorry, that we all see and understand this. Because in order for us to move forward as one, we have to have a shared understanding of the terrain across which we are traversing. It is a terrain that is fraught with all kinds of horrific stereotypes about us. We have to fight those. And we have to fight those not only by telling people who we are, we have to teach them our history. We have to first learn our history. It is so critical. I encourage your audience to go to the Padaji Facebook page. Ipadaji and friends, Ipadaji Coordinating Council members and friends of Ipadaji did a visit this weekend to the 1763 sites. Some of them where Kafi and those others who rose up against their enslavement, where they fought, where they established a republic that lasted for almost a year. And so when people understand how we got here, what we have done to establish this nation, what we have done in spite of our enslavement to be where we are today, I think it provides us with the kind of power that we need to move forward. We have to move forward in unison. And this is not about party unison. This is about unison as people of African descent, confronting what is, to me, our erasure, our destruction as a people in this society. I think it's that we are at our darkest hour. We should not await for it to get darker. And it starts among us, teaching ourselves to be, so we are more vigilant and we stand up and we speak out. We must speak out against this kind of an attack, an insult to us and our ancestors.
To our ancestors and to those of us who are here today. Vincent Alexander, your closing thoughts.
This cartoon provides us with a moment of awakening. I always try to get the positives out of a situation. This cartoon provides us with a moment of awakening. We should understand that this is about the people of African descent not juxtaposing themselves to anyone else, but seeking recognition, justice, and development as the United Nations recognize we are worthy of and should work with us to achieve. We have recognized that based on our activism, that there has been a pushback, and we recognize that that pushback may come in the form of crumbs that some people may consume because of their state of poverty. What we need to do is to recognize that those crumbs are not originally available, and they're only part of a strategy to give us the impression that there is concern. Any real concern has to be manifest in addressing the institutions and the laws that have disadvantaged people of African descent. And in the instance where we have already addressed those laws, already addressed those institutions, equitable action. Because even though a law may project us all as being equivalent, if we have a disadvantage in terms of where we stand, then we cannot equally benefit from that law or that institution. So what Guyana needs is a review of its institutions, a review of its laws, a determination of where change is required, and where change is required, and in relation to where change is not required, equitable opportunities for people of African descent. We are not questioning what is in terms of whether there are certain loans available and all of that. We're not questioning that. We're questioning what is in relation to where we stand. Do we have an equitable opportunity to benefit from what is? Do we have an opportunity to benefit where the what is perpetuates the discrimination that has come down even from the period of slavery? Are we paying attention to the health of African Guyanese as a special issue, given the way in which we are affected by certain diseases more than others? I'm not saying don't attempt the diseases of others, but the point I'm making is that we are ignoring things that affect African Guyanese, which have an historical origin and which need to be addressed to give us the kind of equality for us to continue to contribute and to benefit from the patrimony and the development of this place we call our home.
Caller Vincent Alexander, chairman of ITPADG, and Olive Sampson, the CEO of ITPADG, here tonight on this issue of this damning cartoon in the Stabroek News. And we also touched on the signs of an emerging fascist state in Guyana. We're going to continue this conversation because it will not go away, and we should not be a one-day pony. We will continue to cover this issue in the coming days. Vincent, thank you very much. Olive, thank you also very much for coming on at short notice. And
thank you for allowing us this opportunity
Yeah.
to continue the work of ITPADG. And I hope all Guyanese are listening to what's emerging in our society. And if they're truly Guyanese, taking heed to what's emerging.
What's emerging? Thank you very much, Vincent, and thank you, Olive, and I will be in touch with you. And to you, our audience, you're always extremely um, helpful in keeping our program going. I don't like to be personal about these things, but I have been banned from the pages of the Stabroek News. They don't carry my letters. And I rather suspect it has to do with my stance from 2020, when I did not jump on the bandwagon and to accuse Mr. Mingo and others of rigging an election. I took a different view of the 2020 election, and Stabroek News has, in effect, banned me from their pages. Even recently, I did a letter on Brother UC's 99th birthday. They refused to carry it. Ravidev attacked Brother Kwayana. I responded to him. They refused to carry it. Those are the last two that I sent. It's their paper, and they determine who they carry and who they don't carry. But you can, if you can carry a racist cartoon, you can carry a racist cartoon, but you ban David Hines from your letter section, but you can carry a racist cartoon. It says a lot about where we are going in this country, and the future of our country. Here's hoping Stabroek News does the right thing on this issue and really address what is sure to become a firestorm in the coming days. We cannot have a leading newspaper carry cartoons like that. Oh, how we yearn for a David de Caries. I can say, I didn't know David de Caries well. I met him several times, but in passing, our conversations were short. But I can tell you, that David de Caries would not have allowed a cartoon of this nature to be published. David de Caries would not have banned David Hines from Stabroek News, however quote-unquote controversial it may be. But the editorial and other leadership of Stabroek News have to really come good and clear the air. Protest in front of Stabroek News office, 10 a.m. sharp this Friday. There's a protest in front of the Stabroek News office at 10 o'clock in the morning this Friday. We are going to talk more about that tomorrow. Protests in front of Stabroek News office on Friday at 10 o'clock. We're going to discuss this in further detail tomorrow. I want to thank Mark Benchop for drawing it to my attention, because I had not seen the cartoon. I had not seen it. I don't usually look at the cartoon section. And last night I was on Mark's program, he drew it to my attention. And so let's keep up this fight. Let us keep up the struggle, because our very survival. Next week, Aubrey Norton is going to be back. There's a lot of controversy over what he said about street protests on the program on Monday night. And he will come back to clarify what he thinks is a misunderstanding of his position. We're going to do that next week. But tomorrow and Friday, we continue our coverage of that racially insensitive Stabroek News cartoon. Racially insensitive Stabroek News cartoon. I'll see you all tomorrow when we continue the discussion.